Good evening. It's Jeneen from Jeneen C.A.R.E.S. Excited to be here with another legacy leader. I appreciate the recommendations that have come from different people in my circle, professionally and personally. This one comes from our board member, Mr. Jay Mason, who is a colleague of Mr. Chauncey Winbush, and I appreciate the recommendation, and I'm excited about this interview. We are celebrating legacy leaders who are learning all they can learn. They are empowering others. They have action plans in their community or in their place of work, and they are dreaming big. And so I want them to come on the show and kind of inspire others to do the same thing. And so we're caring, achieving, restoring, empowering, and supporting our youth to become legacy leaders of the future while sharing our legacy leader stories. Dr. Michelle Obama reminds us of the importance of sharing your story with others. And so we'll start with question number one, which allows a narrative of your story. Thank you again for being here. And then we'll go into a restorative dialogue. So if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and experiences, and how you are a legacy leader in life. And thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's very humbling that Jay Mason thought that I might have a background or a history to share with your organization. So, thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Chauncey Winbush. I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee, and I was a short-time Army brat. My dad was in the Army for about 5 years early in my life, and we ultimately settled in Columbia, Maryland. So Columbia, Maryland is where I grew up in Howard County, and I went to Hammond High School, where I participated in 4 or 5 different varsity sports during my time there, and ultimately attended Shepherd College back in those days on a football scholarship. So, so currently I am, the proud husband of Michelle Winbush, who I've had the pleasure and blessings to be married to for 17 years. She is an attorney by trade, and she works for, yeah, thank you. She's an attorney by trade, and she works for an international law firm based out of Baltimore, Maryland, called DLA Piper. I'm also the proud father of a almost 16-year-old son named Chase Winbush, and he is a rising junior and a varsity soccer player. And I'm also the proud father of Chloe Winbush, who is a rising freshman, and she is a cheerleader. So
that's awesome. If I could just stop you for a moment to just share what I have heard so far, is that you growing up in your educational experiences were involved in a lot of activities, which I totally support and did that as a principal, always looking for opportunities to expose students to, as I was as a child too. But now I also hear that your children are also doing the same thing, and that's a wonderful legacy father and mother. How dynamic to grow up in a household with both parents being legacy leaders. I would love to interview your wife as well and see that impact that you're going to have on your children. So please continue. Thank you for that so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've always, my parents and, Michelle, she was a cheerleader in high school. And, my parents always kept me involved in things, even as a child. I feel like each season, fall, winter, and spring, I was doing something. And it was typically on the sports side, whether it be football or basketball or baseball or track or what have you. My mom really just thought that was important for me to be involved and, not kind of just sit around the house and watch TV and play video games all day. And it was, as an only child, it also helped me with, making friends and, seeing how other people lived and, how they were impacted by, whatever socioeconomic, forces that we're involved in. I certainly didn't grow up in a mansion or anything like that, but I grew up in a really solid environment. And, that's a testament to my parents. And, I was my mom was a single parent. I guess my parents got divorced when I was about 14 or 15. So a little later in my childhood, but, still impacts you in the same way, no matter if you're 5, 6, 7, or 14. So I can relate to what you communicated prior to the interview starting. As I had mentioned, I am a former student athlete. I played football at Shepherd University from 1990 to 1993. I was fortunate enough to make my way through the educational system during that time, and I finished in 1995 with a bachelor's degree in accounting. I also have a bachelor's degree in sport management that I completed at Shepherd in 1999. And then I also have a master's in tourism administration with a concentration in sports management from George Washington University, which I finished in 2002.
What was that last degree? I'm sorry, that's awesome. That's where I'm working on my doctorate at George Washington. What was that in?
Master's in tourism administration.
Wow, so you have 3 master's degrees in different areas.
Well, 2 bachelor's degrees and 1 master's.
2 bachelor's and 1 wow, that's amazing, impressive. It's a very diverse experiences as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, the reason why I got into accounting when I was younger, I had the math gene, if you will. My family, we just have that sense of math, and I thought accounting, would be a great career. Everybody always needs someone to manage their books, so forth and so on. So, I was fortunate enough to work in that industry for several years. Ultimately, I spent 15 years working in the athletic department at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland,
Nice.
where I worked on the finance and business side. So I was able to utilize both my accounting background and my love for sports and my degrees in sports management during that time. And then now my role at Shepherd University, I'm the vice president for athletics. Fancy title for the director of athletics.
Okay.
And again, my passion has been athletics, education, and an opportunity to work with young people. So I had the ability to fulfill all of those goals and all of those loves that I have by, leading the athletic department at Shepherd University.
What an amazing story of perseverance and lifelong learning, I would say,
Sure.
and empowering others and speaking to your passions and working in your passion. That's awesome. So thank you for that. Again, this is Jeneen from Jeneen C.A.R.E.S, where we're caring, achieving, restoring, empowering, and supporting our youth as legacy leaders of our future. The next thing that we're going to do is go into a restorative dialogue. I am a licensed trainer for the International Institute of Restorative Practices. I am also the Achievement Specialist for School Culture in Frederick, Maryland, in Frederick County Public Schools. And so as a former principal, I'm excited to be able to make a larger impact on all of our district through training and facilitating trainings around restorative practices, which restorative practices teaches us the importance of building community, building relationships, using a trauma-informed lens to relate to students and to resolve conflicts in a way that's less punitive and more restorative, meaning high control and high expectations combined with support. And so we have the message that, whenever we have to manage a conflict or whenever someone messes up or doesn't meet an expectation, we are going to skillfully use a trauma-informed approach to resolve that conflict, help them hold themselves accountable by reflecting. And so when I think restorative practices or restorative, I think reflective and relationships. And so now we're going to allow some reflection. And so the first question is, since March 13th, and we're going to the past, what has been something that's been present on your mind since March 13th to now?
Obviously all of the crisis that we've been dealing with in the country with the pandemic and the economic crisis. And, obviously the really big one in my mind is the civil unrest that our country has been dealing with. You just kind of continue to feel the sadness that, the Black community is still dealing with, these issues of police brutality and systemic racism. My apologies.
Yeah, no.
And, the sadness of the families that are dealing with this, specifically, the recent victims, of these issues. And, it's just still concerning. And, I think as a country, we need to figure out how to, to do a better job of, breaking the barriers that the Black community faces when you're talking about, dealing with the police or, the economic challenges that, our community faces. I think, the positive thing, and I think you always need to try to bring out some positive message or insight, even when things are negative, is, the national and global protests and rallies that have occurred because of these issues. I really don't think that the protests and these rallies have been as big as they have now in comparison to some of the other issues and situations that we've had in the past. Yes, when you had an issue in Ferguson or, pick a community, there were civil unrest and protests and rallies, in that general area. But
Right.
this is happening all over the nation, all over the world, and in so many different communities. And there's the diversity that you see is really humbling. And it really makes me feel as though the world, the nation is finally hearing what we've been talking about for so long. So I feel some optimism that there will be some changes.
I would totally agree with you.
I'm not going to hold my breath. I know that there's still going to be, a fight at the highest levels of government and, even local government as well. But I just feel as though the nation is tired and is ready for some changes because they are finally seeing what, the African American community is dealing with on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more about everything that you just processed through and reflected on. I think, I have a 6-year-old son who I'm having conversations with about what's present and what's he seeing on TV or um, in the world or hearing people talk about. And so I agree that there is a sense of hope for me that I'm feeling because, I was definitely very concerned when he was born, just knowing that I had a Black male coming into the world. It was just concerning to me. And so he at age 6 is also concerned about how he's going to survive as an adult. And it's the conversation he had with me recently. And so I agree that we need to be hopeful, but also be active voters, aware voters, uh,
Yes.
putting a little bit of pressure on our politicians to make sure that our voices are heard. And so along with my sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we intend to make sure our voice is heard always, and you know do the things in our community that will expose others to the setbacks and things that we're trying to overcome. And so one of the things that we're looking at in Frederick, I'm on a committee where we're looking at trying to have different events that celebrate diversity, celebrate our Black culture, and expose others to the beauty of our culture. And so I'm excited about that. I have been hosting community chats on Sundays, where my next one is Sunday at 8 p.m., where I'm inviting some of our local Frederick politicians to just have a conversation about, what are you thinking? Well, here's what we're thinking. And so doing things like that. Well, what is the hardest thing about, being still, all that's going on? What's been the hardest thing for you presently?
Yeah, probably first, from a personal standpoint, I have a almost 16-year-old son that, just got his first job, and obviously very proud of him from that standpoint. But he'll be getting his driver's license in about a month or so. And to your point, him being a Black male, you know getting out of the house without his parents a little
Right.
more consistently. I'm certainly concerned about his safety, first his safety just being a new driver, but
Yes.
then his safety as a young Black male, if he gets pulled over, what's going to happen. So your point about education and making sure that he understands how to deal with, police or people of authority, if he runs into them without us, is going to be critical. But, myself and my wife, I think, as every parent worries in general, it's about to be ramped up to the 10th degree here in another month or so. So that's one thing that is hard. But, from a personal or from a professional standpoint, working in the sports industry for the last 20 years or so, what I'm lucky is the sports industry as a whole, for the most part, is very diverse and inclusive.
Yeah.
So it's great to be in that type of industry. Um, what I worry about is I see on an annual basis, I have an opportunity to work with young people from the African American community and trying to help and support them in their ultimate goals of being successful, first as a student and then as an athlete. And you see these young people, a lot of times come from underserved communities. And unfortunately, sometimes their backgrounds aren't that strong from an academic standpoint. And I think that is where the whole systemic piece comes from, that they just weren't supported, or maybe their communities weren't supported from an educational standpoint. And it's just, every year, it's just a generational thing, I believe. And it's just really unfortunate. So, we take pride at Shepherd University to try and, give these young people an opportunity to change the arc of their futures and their family's future at that. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, these young people are first-time college students. And for them to spend 4 or 5 years playing a sport that they love and hopefully ultimately getting an education is going to be huge, for them moving forward. So our goal is to make sure that we support them when they're on our campus, to fulfill those goals. But when they're not on our campus, when they're at home in their communities, you worry about them. You worry about, them, hanging, potentially hanging out with, the wrong friends, or, their old crew, if you will, that may not have the same goals that they have. So, I'm not going to say it keeps me up at night, but I think about them. I think about them often in the summer when they're away from Shepherd University's campus. So, I worry about their safety. I worry about the safety of their families. And then obviously with all of the civil unrest, a lot of that unrest is in the communities that they live in. And I worry about them making, the right choices. Yes, we want you to go to a rally. Yes, we want you to protest, but we want you to be smart. We want you to be safe. We don't want you to be a part of the negative aspects of some of these things that have been occurring. We always communicate, no matter where you are representing Shepherd University. You're representing, Shepherd football or basketball or baseball, or whatever sport that you're playing. So, the hard thing for me is, I have 2 students or 2 kids personally, but we have 300 plus student athletes, and I feel like I have 300 plus kids, and I worry about them all, and want them all to be safe.
Absolutely. And that is a lot of which is on my mind. I have a class of 2020 graduate who is transitioning to Hampton University in the fall. And so as a proud HBCU alum, I'm proud to see her continue the tradition of going to HBCUs. But at the same time, yes, I worry about her this summer, even as she continues to try to, interact with her friends, some of which are going to college, some of which are not. And just, you always want them to make good choices and surround themselves with people that will empower them. And you think about, all the life lessons that you have, instilled in them through activities, through your peers that you expose them to, through opportunities. And you just, understand that one bad decision or poor choice could to change the trajectory of their lives. And so that is definitely an a concern of mine. And I also, working in the Department of Student Services, where I work alongside on the student leadership team with the head of psychology, the head of counseling, the head of student services, and our community liaisons and our PPWs who are, speaking about how much they are concerned about the students' emotional and physical safety. We have a small population of homeless students. And so, all these things are of concern. And so I agree. And then we have to add on, unrest and COVID. And so it's a lot to think about. So we as leaders, though, have to remain positive, at least publicly. And so we were talking about that a little bit before, and you've already shared your positivity a little bit. What else are you doing with family or with your staff members or with, messages to students or anything to help everyone remain positive, even yourself, for self-care, to keep, as you manage all that you're reflecting on, how are you maintaining your own positive energy and to be able to pour out the positive energy into others?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about communication. So, back when COVID hit and the NCAA made the decision to cancel all of spring sports, we're obviously, disappointed, but understood that, this pandemic is about, the safety of our communities. And, you have to put sports aside for the bigger picture. As much as I love athletics, as much as our coaches and our student athletes love to compete, sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture. And that was obviously, the pandemic and COVID-19 and making sure that, we tried to mitigate it as quickly as possible. So what we communicated to our, my coaches and our student athletes was just that. Yes, you're disappointed, but there are bigger things in life. This is not the end of the world. That old adage, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
So communicating with my coaches on a weekly basis, making sure that they were communicating with their student athletes, on a daily and weekly basis as well, was really what we strove to do. It was important for a couple of reasons. Not only to make sure from an academic standpoint that they were, still progressing, because, why are you in college? To progress toward your degree. But also mental health is a huge issue, obviously from a national standpoint, but it's something that we in the NCAA industry are really focusing on as well. If you put aside COVID, just being a student athlete is very stressful with all of the hours that are involved with, competing and working out and academics and studying, things like that. So you bring COVID back in, that was something that we really focused on, making touches, making sure that we're reaching out to communicate to our kids that, hey, this too will pass. We're going to work at this together. Let's stay focused. Let's stay, focused on your faith, focused on your family, focused on your friends. And if you do that, we'll get through this together. So, I'm fortunate to have, a small staff of four, three other athletic directors that, really, support all of our student athletes as well and our coaches. But that's what we're really focused on. Hey, we're disappointed. This is a concern. But if we pull together as one family, we'll all get through this together.
Awesome. Well said. I think faith, family, and friends is something that I have pictured on my wall. And so I like those messages that of hope, inspiration, and keeping a faith-based, all things are possible kind of a mindset, really a growth mindset. Rather than a fixed mindset. And I love that you said communication. It sounds like time management is something that you've worked with your team on. And obviously mental health. I think we are all experiencing secondhand trauma as we watch people die from COVID or Black Lives Matters, things related. So I agree with the things you shared, and I appreciate you've also shared some messages already of how to be positive, focusing on faith. But as we close out this interview, what else would you like to offer for our students of messages of inspiration, or for our parents that are, helping to be stay-home teachers, or, coaches at home, as they always are, but even more so, especially for those younger students. What messages do you want to send or close out with for parents and students?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll first apologize because, most of, my conversations are athletically based. So
That's okay. That's okay. It's a so that would be a good, addition to
yeah,
my series. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. So, so what I would, first say to kids is, you got to set goals and you have to work diligently to reach those goals. So whether that's to make your JV soccer team, or, to start on the varsity softball team, you have to first set that goal. And then you have to make sure that you're doing everything in your power to reach those goals. So I always talk to my son, who is a soccer player,
Okay.
and I see him sometimes laying around, and I said, hey, there's somebody outside working on, you pick a skill,
Yeah.
dribbling or what have you right now, while
Right.
you're, sitting on the couch. So make sure that your time management is good and your skill development, while not at practice, is continuous. I also communicate that education, education is obviously number one. My kids certainly know that if their grades aren't in order, they're not going to have an opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities. And,
Student athlete. Yes.
student athletes, it's two words. It's not just athlete, it's not just student, it's both. So, make sure that you are focused on both aspects of, whatever it is. It may not be student athlete, it may be student and chess player, or student and musician, or what have you. So make sure that you are focusing on academics. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, make sure that you're focusing on your faith, making sure you're focusing on family and friends. And I think if you look at those three aspects of life, I think you'll have a lot of success in your career.
Awesome.
And then from a parental standpoint, I always communicate to, make sure you're challenging your kids, but try not to be overbearing, which can be difficult.
A nice little balance, right?
Which can be difficult.
Well,
So
very restorative, high control, but then support, and support is in the form of what they need, right? Not what you are trained to give them, or what you've got and receive, because it's different for every child, right?
absolutely. Sometimes, in my travels, you see parents that are trying to live vicariously through their kids. And it makes for a more stressful situation for the student, for your child,
Yes.
and for the parent-child relationship as well. So, not every kid is going to compete at the highest level of wherever they are, whether it be, AAU or Little League baseball or high school. Just make sure that they are doing something, again, whether it's athletics or the chess club, or, being a musician or playing in the band or what have you. Make sure that they have a diverse background. So don't just play either one sport or one instrument or what have you. Make sure that you bring some diversity. If they are an athlete, try to see if they want to play an instrument or be a part of another club. I think that diverse background only will make them better as they move toward high school and college. And then lastly, love them for who they are, not for you to expect them to be.
I love that. I love all of those messages, and I can connect with each one of them. Thank you for your time this morning. I have appreciated this interview. I know that it's going to touch, motivate, and inspire one of our future legacy leaders. Thank you for being a legacy leader. Thank your wife for being a legacy leader. And I look forward to maybe interviewing her as well, to celebrate our legacy leaders anywhere and everywhere. Once again, it's Jeneen from Jeneen C.A.R.E.S, where we are caring, achieving, restoring, empowering, and supporting our legacy leaders of the future by using legacy leaders like Mr. Chauncey Winbush, who just shared an amazing story with you, amazing words of wisdom, amazing words of inspiration and hope for our youth and for their parents. And so thank you again for your time. And I remind all of our students to lead. Learn all that you can learn daily from anyone who will be willing to teach you. Definitely focus on your education, because education is first, even if you're involved, as we discussed, in activities like sports or music. Your priority is your education. When you're in school, that's your full-time job. And then empower others as you climb, and surround yourself with people who are going to empower you. Make good choices. Action. Act with an action plan, because we need you as our leaders of the future. And we want to encourage you to dream big. And so thank you again for your time today, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.